Lesley, welcome to the show. Welcome to True Hope Cast. Good morning. I hope you're doing well. How are you? What's going on?
Oh, Simon, thank you for having me. I'm great. It's a beautiful day out. And I get to do all my work from home, so life is pretty good.
Magic. I'm glad to hear that. That's awesome. Well, why don't you just introduce yourself to us and to myself? Like, who are you and what is it that you do?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lesley Logan. I am a certified Pilates instructor, habits, mindset, and breathwork coach. And I do that all from home now. I've started teaching in 2008. And honestly, never thought I'd be a Pilates instructor. Really didn't know what it was until my first class. And honestly, and I really made fun of it too before I went. I was like, this is an infomercial workout. It's not going to do all the things it says. But I fell in love with it. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever done. It changed my outlook on the day. And I know if you work out, you're like, yeah, most workouts do that. But like it really, like I had like a pep in my step. I was like, I had so much zest for the day. And having been somebody who was like, I'm always a pretty optimistic person, but to like have like this energy and drive the whole day from a workout, I was like, this is amazing. I have to do it all the time. And then fast forward, somebody suggested I just become a teacher. And I just really didn't know that that was something I could do. I never saw people like just switch careers growing up. So I didn't realize that I could do that. But I needed some extra money and I kind of wanted to pay for my new habit of going to class every day. So I became a teacher and I got so busy teaching even during the recession that was happening. I had to quit my real job and just teach full time. And then that took me around the world teaching people how to teach Pilates, taking people on retreats, and just being able to see the effects of what Pilates does on people's lives is incredible. It's fulfilling. I really love it.
Cool. What is Pilates? I've absolutely heard of the word. I've never been into a Pilates class. I don't know why. I think when I first got into um, yoga, it was very much on like the west coast of Canada. So it was kind of just like all yoga and everyone's into yoga and everyone carried their yoga mats with them everywhere. But Pilates, not so much, but I'm sure there are lots of Pilates places over there, but I don't know why, but it never came across my radar. So tell us what it is. Like, how does it differ from yoga?
Yeah. So all great questions. And, um, because Pilates was brought to the US in the 20s, like 1920s, it's not it doesn't surprise some people have not seen a lot of it or they haven't had it come across their path because there haven't been teachers doing it for hundreds of years like yoga, right? So it's just been a little bit more contained. But in the 80s, it definitely got more spread out. And then after there was a lawsuit, so it allowed people to actually all be Pilates instructors in 2001, then it really started to take off because people could actually use the name without getting in trouble. So it's a little history on Pilates. What is Pilates? It is a strength-based workout that is designed to balance your imbalances. And you can do it on the mat, similar to a yoga classes on the mat, but you need a thicker mat for sure. Hence why you don't see a lot of people walking around with one because it's a little bit more bulky to have a Pilates mat under your arm. But there's the mat work, which is all body weight. So that's similar to yoga. And I can dive in deeper into the differences in a moment. And then there's equipment. And that's where the access gets a little bit trickier because you have to have someone who's trained in all of the pieces of equipment. There's a lot of them. It takes a longer training and they're not always accessible. But it is the coolest workout that really does meet you where you are and take you and it gets more challenging the more you do it. So even though you're doing some of the same exercises from day 1 to 10 years later, you find more muscles that you can use to support you in that exercise. Everything gets a little more possible, doesn't get easier, but gets more possible. And it's something that is designed to benefit everything you're already doing. So it's not where it's like once you do Pilates, you don't do anything else. No, it actually works really great in conjunction with running and weightlifting and if you're doing yoga or swimming, anything like that, it's really going to help balance all those things out and help you do those better without you having to like do more of that to get better at it. So it's pretty cool. It's like a nice little secret weapon. It differs from yoga in a lot of ways. First, yoga is mostly strictly on a mat. There are some classes that have slings or straps, but mostly it's only on a mat. And then also, even though if you look at how yoga is supposed to be done, yoga can be a strength-based workout. Most people do it for the stretch. um, and and um, and the classes are really a lot longer. There's a lot of emphasis on breath. Whereas Pilates, yes, there's an emphasis on breath. Joseph Pilates wanted everyone to learn how to breathe for sure. But every exercise has its own breath pattern. As long as you're breathing, that's really important. Keep going. We're not going to get really strict on that. And it is very much a strength base, is focusing strength on a strength part first and connecting to your center before you go out. So while there's some similarities, they're both movement meditations. Your Pilates practice is a little shorter and has equipment access as well.
Cool. Do you find in your experience people either do Pilates or do yoga or do meditation, they kind of stick to one thing, or do you have people that come in that are using, doing different different types of these, I suppose like self strength, self recognition? It's like I find yoga all about like taking the hour or the 30 minutes or whatever to just like dive deep into myself and really feel what my body is. I'm not a huge fan of the classes because everyone in that room is very different in regards to like where they are with their body, like even like day to day. So I kind of
Yeah.
like to like feel out where my body's at and really focus on those areas rather than like just like going through that whole routine. But do you find people like either go to Pilates or they go to yoga or they try like something else, or do like people like to mix it up?
I know a lot of people who once they get into Pilates, that's all they do. And that's especially if you have the access to equipment and you're mixing it up. That's great, because it has so many different options for you. However, most people I work with, they come to Pilates because they love something else and they don't want to get injured. So when you are too flexible, you are like, so hypermobile bodies, which love to go to yoga because they can do all of the moves really beautifully. Unfortunately, it's not about having a beautiful practice. It's actually about the person doing the practice. But it's that you actually are more susceptible to be injured because you don't have strength to support that flexibility. Vice versa, people who like only weight train, and I love my weight training. I lift heavy weights. I'm big on it. I do a CrossFit light style workout, but if you are only focusing on strength training, you are going to get injured, right? So you have to have a balance of flexibility and strength always in your body, especially if you're listening, you're a woman. I'm talking to you. Like the stronger you are going into menopause, I promise you life is easier for you. So, so, so I personally really try to keep people diversifying their movements. But having a consistent Pilates practice, especially with the mat, allows you to do 3 to 4 times a week of Pilates, maybe even 5 or 6 times a week of Pilates, because you can do a 15-minute Pilates mat workout before you lift or after you lift or before you run. And so it can be this nice little cross training that can get you ready, warmed up for what you're doing, or cool down from what you were just doing.
That's cool. I think that it's so interesting how people get drawn towards different types of activity. Usually, it's down to like what was your experience when you first started Pilates? Was it a friend kind of dragged you into it? Like, yeah, that's usually kind of how it goes, and it's usually like it's within our friend circles. Eventually, somebody like pulls you in, but it's super funny because like that person who brings you in, like, it was the same for me with yoga. Somebody was talking about yoga all the time, all the time, all the time, and how wonderful it made them feel. And for some reason, I like didn't do it for a couple of months before I finally kind of gave in to to this like process of being continually asked. And then
I
I
think
went and I felt amazing.
I think it's that what we resist is there to assist, but like
Mm.
we don't always like change. And we also have some sort of thing in our head from whatever we heard or saw from somebody else. And like I'd seen Pilates on an infomercial, and I just always grew up thinking that infomercials were here to steal your money. Like, no, for like 3 payments of $9.99 shipping and handling. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I just had this like connotation that if it was on the infomercial channel, then it couldn't work. And for you, probably maybe you heard something about yoga that like it was like we just kind of resist change. And oftentimes like what we're resisting is really the thing is there to help us. And like for you, your yoga practice helps you like really spend time with yourself because you're different day to day. And that is so true. Like our bodies are literally different every single day based on like if you slept too little, if you slept too much, if you slept on the wrong side, maybe you had a stressful day the day before and you didn't even realize how tense, like you were waiting for a decision or waiting for an email, and so you were super super tense. Well, now the next day, of course you're tight, of course like something's going to go wrong. And so why I love whether people have a yoga practice or of course I hope they have a Pilates practice because it's really going to make your yoga practice stronger. you get to spend time with your body in that moment, in that day, and you can only think about what your body is doing in that moment. So Pilates used to be called contrology, right? The art of control, the study of control. And we can control so little in our lives, like pretty much nothing. But when you are doing your Pilates practice, you actually can focus on how you control your body in that moment. And then you get to be really like an observer of it. Wow, I couldn't do that yesterday. Or, oh, I'm super judging myself right now. Like how we are on our mat, how we do one thing is how we do everything. And so when I teach people Pilates, what I'm really a big proponent of is like, how are you talking to yourself right now? I just asked you to do this thing. Did you just get mad at yourself or just go, I can't do that? That's how you're approaching every obstacle in your day. That's how you talk to yourself. So what if we like practice a different thing right now in this moment in our body? And how if we practice it there, then it's going to be easier for our brain to go, oh, we have another option we can do right here. And so that's my big thing about when people are doing fitness modalities where they actually have to think about what they're doing, they have to focus on how their body is, and they have to pay attention to what it's saying to them. That is going to help them be more attentive to what their body is saying to them all day long. And our bodies are telling us things all day long. And most of us are just so disconnected, we're not listening.
Yeah, the idea to take that practice and take that strength and take that consciousness into throughout your day, without question, is something that a lot of those types of activities really helps. You don't just want that to be an experience for 30 minutes or an hour and it's kind of done. No, I think that you're supposed to learn and definitely connect your mind and body better, because most people kind of have this like disconnect between their mind and their body. And meditation, yoga, Pilates, all without question, whilst using your breath and becoming very, very engaged in where your thoughts are at and what your body's doing. And we're actually kind of like checking in with our physical body and like noticing tightness or pain or tenderness, and like checking in with that. I find that it's really, really important way to become conscious off the mat and out of the studio. And
Yeah.
how do people like know if like Pilates is like right for them? Like what type of questions could they be asking themselves?
Yeah, well, if you have a body, then you can do Pilates. So there's that. That's a good thing. Now, if it's right for you or not, I think mostly you have to find the teacher that's going to be the right person for you. So, and that goes for anything, right? Like if you took a yoga class and you didn't really love the teacher, you hopefully wouldn't go, well, yoga didn't work for me. Hopefully you'd go find, and so like therapy, right? Like not every therapist is the right person for the right, like you have to find the right people for you. So first, truly like I would figure out like what do you have access to? First, is there any even like a studio where you live? Or are you someone who likes to work out at home? Or are you someone like Simon likes to do his yoga by himself, right? Like um figure out who you are. Do you need the energy of being in a space of a group of people, or are you wanting to be by yourself? And then that way you can decide if there's a studio, do they have private sessions that you could take, or find an online platform like mine where you can do it when you want to at home and be supported. Then you want to actually give yourself permission to be a student. So if you are someone who's super, super hard on yourself, Pilates is really going to be where you find yourself, because we tend to draw a lot of high overachiever perfectionist people in recovery. So that's a good sign. But noticing like trying to find the right modality, the right teacher, and then the right version applies for you. There's a couple different variations, just like in yoga. There's yin yoga, there's Ashtanga, there's all that stuff, right? In Pilates, I'm a classical teacher, and what that means is on the mat, we start with the 100, we end with push-ups. So if you know Ashtanga, there's an order for that. Pilates mat has the exact same thing. And what I love about it is you don't have to do every exercise, because not every exercise is right for you today. That's the important part, yet is a really good word to use. And instead, everything is compounding. So you do the exercises you can do, you replace the ones you can't do with the ones you can do, and they all start to add up. And over time, you get to see, oh, wow, look, I couldn't do it yesterday. I could do it today. So you get to really compare yourself to yourself. But if you have access to a studio and you like to go in person, then that's going to be what you want to look into. And then you want to try out different people. You really also want to make sure like they've been trained. Ask them, how long was your training? You're looking for someone who's been trained usually 450 to 950 hours in their first training is a good sign. And then you want to find the person who understands your body. So if you are a super tight person, you might not want the dancer teacher. They might, I'm not knocking them. Oh my gosh, they're going to listen to this and be like, Lesley, I could teach with people. Every teacher has opportunity to teach different people. But again, finding the person that resonates with you. I wasn't a dancer. So even though it was a hypermobile body, I was an athlete. So I taught a lot of athletes when I first started teaching, a lot of football players, a lot of basketball players, and I was working on balancing their imbalances. So really trying to find someone who resonates with you is going to be the best thing. And then give yourself permission to be in practice. So this is really going to be a struggle for those of you who like really want it to be perfect right away. Your first 10 sessions of Pilates, you're going to be like, what is this weirdness? I don't understand. You might love it, but also like not get it. But then your body starts to understand where you move from, which is not your elbows, your wrists, your feet, your knees. It's from your center. And your center is all the muscles around your hips, around your waist, around your shoulder girdle. It's all the muscles that support your skeleton, right? Your spine. And then the arms and the legs are there to see if they can challenge that connection. And so that takes about the next 20 sessions. But what's really cool is if you're doing Pilates 2 to 3 times a week in a month, you're gonna be like, oh my God, I get it. I understand it. And now I have a foundation I can work from. So being patient with yourself is going to be the challenge for most people, but it's also really beautiful to see people go from like, this is really weird to, ooh, this is like, feels really good.
Is there like a core discipline factor with Pilates? I think some really great benefits of, let's say, some martial arts. There is this like core ideal around the practice, around the culture, of, let's just say, karate, for instance, or kung fu. There's this really cool discipline factor that kind of comes hand in hand with the practice itself. Does Pilates have that type of ideal?
Yeah. You mean like, in like the core strength, or just like that, like there's values that go well along with being in the Pilates practice?
Yeah, I suppose it's more like a core value thing, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So, if you look, I mean, just like any workout out there, even this has happened to yoga, there's going to be some very commercialized versions of it that are like designed to get you that Pilates body, and they're going to lengthen and strengthen, like lengthen your muscles, and we cannot make your bones longer.
Yeah.
Just gonna be really honest. Like, so a lot of that stuff is just like really good marketing. But the core values of Pilates are just this: like, it is a practice. And it's not like that is like really, really, you go to practice. So just like you go to do your yoga, you know that when you do your yoga, you've done how many chaturangas and how many downward dogs. And every single time you're trying to find more in that downward dog than you found last time. That's the same thing that goes on in Pilates. Every time you do an exercise, you're actually just trying to find more out of it. So maybe in the beginning, you used a lot of like your upper arms instead of like your whole body. So the core, and then the other thing is that you move from the center out. So we're always trying to connect to the center first, and then we move out from that. And then the other thing that's really important that a lot you'll see people really having to practice is that you just keep the breath flowing. So we're not like inhaling here and exhaling here and then inhaling over here. Like the breath just flows, because when you leave your Pilates practice, you are actually walking down the street and you don't go inhale right leg, exhale left leg. You just are breathing, right? So those core principles, you'll see like people will tout like these 6 principles of Pilates. That was not written by Joseph Pilates. And that's just precision, flow, control. There's a few other ones that I clearly don't memorize anymore because they're not what Joseph Pilates wanted. He wanted everybody to learn how to move. He wanted you to move. And when he brought his work into the US, he was looking at all these people and they were just deconditioned bodies from working in factories, from sitting at desks. And he believed we all sat too much. And can you imagine in the 20s, they sat too much? Now look at all of us.
Oh my gosh.
Everything is done sitting. But at any rate, like his whole thing was he just really wanted people to move and to really use their whole body. Even when you're in the shower, he has this whole method of how you should shower. Which I know can sound really weird. You're like, oh my God, Leslie, you're going to teach me how to shower. I'm not going to teach you how to shower. That is not something I do. But he really wanted people to like bend down, wash your ankles instead of like having the scrub brush on a stick where you like don't have to lean over, and it's just about keeping us young and strong longer. So I think like when you get into Pilates, there's so much to understand. And really, truly, like the more you can just be in your body and like ask yourself, where am I feeling this right now? How is this feeling better than yesterday? And what is so cool about that is a lot of us don't spend enough time asking ourselves how we feel right now. A lot of us do not spend a
Totally.
lot of time like like checking in with our bodies. And so then when people are telling you to use your gut instinct, well, they don't ever listen to their gut. They're not listening to their body. How can they decide what the difference in their gut and their mind and like somebody else? So really, truly, like when you are doing a Pilates practice, you're really focusing on like, where am I moving from? What is possible? Oh, like how do I do this? And like, how do I incorporate all these things so that when you go and do life, you just do it better. You are able to reach up to the top shelf from more of a strength place instead of like just like shoulder in your ear. And like, how do people injure themselves? Usually doing something around the house. And so the goal is like when you do this practice, you can actually do the life that you're doing without injury and also getting to know yourself more.
Yeah, functional movement, it's so interesting because I think that so many injuries that that come up for a lot of people, be that like lower back or shoulders or neck. It's usually like doing having poor movements like 100 times a day, right? These
Yep.
like little micro movements that we're not really conscious about. It's not really deliberate movement. When you're talking about like having like a conscious shower routine, that makes a heck of a lot of sense, right? Because somebody drops the shampoo bottle and they just like quickly just like bend over with no thought of like what muscles they're using. And you get to a certain age where that you're not taking that into consideration. You could potentially do yourself some significant damage. And if you've got those weak muscles and weak ligaments around that area that you're not really consciously using, yeah, you can do some big damage there. So it makes a heck of a lot of sense that whether you were reaching to the top shelf in the kitchen or picking up something off the floor, you should really be thinking about like how are you going to move your body in the best possible way to
Mhm.
that you're not going to do yourself any damage or leave yourself in a vulnerable state. So yeah, I love the ideal around that functional movement. I think a lot of people who get like stuck and bound to, let's just say, like gym and weight workouts, it's like how functional is lifting 50 pounds dumbbells and just ripping the guns. Like how functional is that in like your real life?
Right. I mean, I think when I look at people who weight lift and that's all they do, I really do look to see how balanced they are.
Mm,
And Arnold Schwarzenegger, in one of those documentaries about him and his bodybuilding, somebody said like, "Oh, are you going to work on getting your arms bigger?" And he said, "If I want to get my arms bigger, I have to get everything else bigger. Otherwise, it's out of balance."
mhm.
And I couldn't like, I was like, that is so Pilates. But the truth is like a lot of people go and they do their arms or they do their legs. And if you look at them, their shoulders are rounded forward because that's how they spend their life. And then they do a lot of stuff that they can see because that's how we work out. We're like, what can I see?
Yeah.
And we also avoid doing exercises that are hard. Like people are not doing exercise they're not good at. That's because you don't like it because you're not good at it. So you don't want to do it. So you do the things that you're good at and you're getting stronger at. And where Pilates can come in is it can really help balance those imbalances so that when you are weightlifting, when you are working out, you are a lot more conscious of like, oh, just because I'm lifting my arms doesn't mean my core isn't working, doesn't mean I'm not standing in all of my leg muscles, not just my joints, and doesn't mean I can't have my shoulders on my back and connect to my back. And so it really is important for, especially for people who are doing heavy lifting, to have functional movement training. And when I see people who are squatting, I look at their knees and you can tell that there's imbalances in their hips. Well, Pilates has everything is from the center. So we have to start with those hip muscles engaged first. So it's really important for that. But if you all look at like a kid in your life and look at how they squat down to pick something up, they squat the way we're all supposed to squat. We're all born picking things up correctly. No one is born with an imperfect picking up practice. What happens is, as adults, we start to see, or as we grow up, we see other adults just like leaning over and picking something up, leaning over, grabbing the groceries, turning to the side and just like leaning over and grabbing things like this. They're not thinking about where they're moving things from. And so then, of course, they totally pull a muscle. They totally hurt themselves. They tear something. And that is because they're not in practice of how to work with their entire body in a functional way, in a conscious way. And so we have to retrain that and we have to make a prioritization of like, this is the body I have. And as long as like, you want to get as old as possible with all your own parts, like you really do, and so you have to start on a younger age. And if you're feeling a little older and you're like, oh, now it's too late, today is better than tomorrow. So it's not too late. And you can really do some reverse on some of the weaknesses you have and make them stronger.
Yeah, that just makes me think of like, obviously our biological body is ancient, and we have we have the evolution of our culture, which is, kind of so vast and beyond that our biology hasn't been able to catch up yet. And I would just imagine that the fact, well, just when you're talking about squatting there, and my 3-year-old just like spends half of his day squats.
Mm-hmm.
And we would traditionally spend so much more time in that position down on the floor. That's where we did everything. That's where we would play. That's where we would talk. That's how we would eat. That's how we would cook. But now we're kind of like upright, and we're stretching for this. We're stretching for that. We're putting our bodies in positions it's probably not supposed to be in. Especially, I mean, how like wildly vulnerable are you putting your body in a position when you're like stretching up for something and you're not like moving and turning and being deliberate or even getting a chair out? Like, we're just putting our bodies in very unnatural positions. And you add in the fact that most people are quite deficient in a lot of nutrients, and a lot of people sit way too much, and they don't have that strength there anyway. So it just makes a heck of a lot of sense that we do have a significant amount of people carrying like big injuries. And it makes so much sense to take it back to what we were doing when we were kids. I've got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, right? So I've very recently seen the development of how a child goes from not being able to move really at all, like being a potato for 4 or 5 months, and then like rolling over, and then crawling, and then getting up, and very slowly like figuring that balance out. And they're learning in their mind, and they're learning in their body. It's unbelievably wonderful to watch. And then they start walking, and then they're squatting, and they're running around, and and if you wanted to, as an adult, really get back to like the core like fundamentals, you should spend 30 minutes of your day crawling around on the floor and squatting and doing all those like child things. Because a child isn't just like learning how to walk, they are creating the foundation of their incredible body to be able to carry them around the planet for 90 years. And like, we, as you say, like, we forget how to do that with the introduction of offices and sitting down at school for 8 hours, and like not using our body as we were supposed to. And then we have generations of individuals who are just like cut off from their mind and their body. And yeah, it just makes so much sense that you would go back to that like fundamental, get on the ground, start crawling again, and literally start learning how to carry this incredible thing around the day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my yoga teacher says the 2 worst inventions were chairs and shoes. Like, our feet are shoved in shoes all day long, and then we wonder why our back hurts. Well, your shoes tell you how to walk. You don't. The shoes literally tell your foot how to roll through the ground, right? And then chairs, like, we were not designed to sit in chairs. Like, the spine was not designed to be sat on like that. It just isn't. And so, and to do it all day long for hours and hours, and then people go home and they sit and watch TV. It's like, of course you don't feel good. And of course, any amount of movement, like, you're like, Lesley, I'm too exhausted, I don't have enough time to move. I promise you that's because you don't move. Like, we need, like, whether or not you do Pilates after this, it's fine. Like, I hope you do. But like, I really just think, even if you go for a walk around the block, like, walking intentional, not fast walking, just taking a walk around the block gets the blood from your calves, which is your second heart, back up to your brain, back up to your body, right? And it lowers stress levels. It's proven fact. Like, it's just a nice walk actually lowers those cortisol levels. If you even just start with that, and you do that every day, just around your block, then you'll actually get faster. You'll crave it more. You'll find more time for it. And then you'll be able to do other movement modalities because your body's going to want it. It's going to tell you, I need more. And I think people think, I don't have time to do that. But when you work yourself out intentionally with a workout practice that actually makes you feel good and all the things that you're already doing, you end up with more time because you have more energy to do all the tasks that you're doing. When a tired body takes longer to do everything.
Yeah, I mean, if you just think about like the time you would save from potential injuries and physio appointments, and you couple that time with money as well, it's an investment, right, that you're putting into yourself and into your health and well-being. I think a core thing we've spoken about today is like self-care. And whether you do choose to take 30 minutes to just go for a walk by yourself, or to try Pilates, or to do yoga or meditation, whatever it is, that like one thing that you do that for a lot of busy people can be that like 1 30 minutes, that 1 hour where you're actually like sat with yourself, focused, rebuilding and re-energizing yourself and bringing that energy back towards you, rather than it focusing on, families, partners, work, the madness of the world, whatever that might be, right? So that self-care piece is so important. So why do you think people should put a conscious effort in self-care? And like, within that self-care piece, it's like you're taking yourself away from all the other important responsibilities in your life. So is that a selfish thing to want to go and do that? Because for a lot of people who have been carers, who've been mothers for long periods of time, it's very difficult for them to, when their kids move out of the house, to start putting their energy back on themselves. Like, it's not a normal thing for those individuals to do. So they really struggle with that transition of being a carer for 20 years. And then, okay, like now I've got all this like time on my hands and I'm so used to just giving my time and my energy away. How do you start bringing that back? And like how vital is that self-care piece and that discovery?
I think that I think it's really sad that we think that we don't get to care for ourselves until after we're done caring for others. I actually, for every parent out there listening, your actions are caught, not taught. And if you're telling your kids they can be anything in the world they want to be, but all they see is their parents like sacrificing themselves to care for them, then they don't actually think that they can be both a parent and what they want to be in life. They're going to think they have to make a choice. And I don't think you'd ever want your kids to think that they couldn't be what they wanted and also like have a family, right? There is ways of, there's help, there's communities, there's other things that are out there. And I think that truly, if a parent is actually taking care of themselves, and that should not be called selfish, it just should be like the priority, right? You put your air mask on first. You're not any good to your kid if you're not here on this planet. But if you are not taking care of yourself, how do you show up? You show up stressed out, you show up exhausted, you show up like half paying attention to them because you're like, oh my God, I'm so tired. They need this. They have this question. I just need to take a shower. I need all these things. If you actually took care of yourself first, then you could be way more present with your children, with the people in your lives. If you don't have children, then you absolutely have to be more selfish so that you can take care of the people who do have children around you. But for my carers, like, it shouldn't be that you have, obviously when you have an infant, this is a different story. Infants, babies that actually like need you, there's a different season for you, but there has to be, as they start to get older, a priority, even if it's 10 minutes a day that you are giving to you first only, that is your 10 minutes, and teaching the people around you, like, this 10 minutes is my 10 minutes. And I will be with you after this is over. Like when this bell goes off, and yeah, it's going to be frustrating. And yeah, little kids aren't going to understand it, but they will understand when they're older. And what they won't say when they're growing up is like, oh gosh, I wish my parents hadn't taken so much time for themselves to be so that they could just be with me. No, they'll say like I had a great time with my parents when we were here and here because they were so present with me. Like my parents did not, in the beginning of my childhood, did not take care of themselves first. And so all I remember is them yelling, stressed out, exhausted. Every time I wanted to do something, it was a no because they didn't have energy. They did not have it. And so I don't that's unfortunate. So I really just think like if you are caring for people in your life, if there's people who rely on you showing up and being there for them, then you absolutely 100% owe it to them to be your full self when you show up for them. And the only way to do that is to take care of yourself first, whether that's a Pilates practice, an intentional walk practice, a meditation practice, sleeping. Those things matter. You are no good to anybody exhausted, burnt out, and tired.
Why do you think we have this big struggle though to even think about giving ourselves self-care, love, attention, conscious work? Why is it built into us? Is it been, or has it been built into us?
I think they hand it to you as soon as you think you're pregnant, as soon as you're a mom, like it's definitely, here's your guilt trip handed to you. I also think that like, I think that a lot of things in our life need a rebranding. I think the word selfish needs a different word. There needs to be a version of selfish that is a positive versus like, a negative. And I also think, we in society we like highlight and praise people who are busy. and who can do it all. Oh my God, they do it all. They do it all. Like that, look what they can do. Like it's all
Hmm.
this stuff about like being the like person who can do it all on your own, do it perfectly, and you know, all this stuff. And the reality is like no one is out there going, oh wow, like have you seen her? She sleeps 8 hours. She gets a lot of sleep. No one's
Yeah.
like out there going, hey, 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 way to take care of yourself. They're all like, oh, must be nice that you can do that. That's what people say to people. So like we have the media who's ingrained on us that we have to be really, really busy to be important. And self-care is selfish, like is being selfish. And like actually you should only reward yourself with time at the spa. And it should not be like something that's just part of your routine. And then we have other people who do this self-care shaming where they're like, oh, it must be nice that you can go for a walk every day. And it's like we have to actually, there needs to be a rebrand in all of this, and everybody needs to like take the person in their life who's like must be nice and say, you know what, it is nice, and I would love to know why you don't think you can do that for yourself. And we have to have some confrontational conversations. But one thing that I do as a Pilates instructor, because I have clients who like go, oh, I can't come in, my kid has this, my kid has this, whatever, and I literally say, you actually don't just hire me to show up and teach when you're here. You hired me to hold you accountable to the things you said you wanted for yourself. And so I know your kid has that, but you need to figure out a way. Maybe there's another kid in class whose mom can take your kid to school on those 2 days. And then you can take her kid and your kid to school on these 2 days so you can show up for yourself today. Like we have to stop thinking that we have to be a martyr in our lives for the people around us and start seeing how can I get this parent over here to help me on these 2 days and I'll help them on these 2 days. And believe it or not, like we used to do that. We prefer like there used to be tribes and like the women and like people took care of the people in the tribe as a community. And now we're like, nope, you're on your own. Good
Yeah.
luck.
Yeah. It's pretty savage in regards to how far we've come away from those original aspects. And yeah, I've done a couple of interviews with individuals who talk a lot about how, we're not supposed to, not have the support from like our mothers or our the grandparents of our kids, like we're supposed to kind of like have that. That's kind of like originally built into the community, the
Mhm.
tribal system. We
Mhm.
don't really have that so much. And yeah, like I find it interesting when you're talking about the idea of looking at these individuals who do seem to have all this time or do seem to have all these things that we don't have. And, envy is an absolute killer of joy.
Mhm.
And yeah, and that again, it's just like looking out, it's looking external, it's looking out from us. It's not looking back within and thinking about like what I could do, what I could change, what am I actually capable of, how can I, adapt to these things to be a bit more selfish and get that 30 minutes, even if it's just like 30 minutes a week of just like being on your own. Like, how can you actually do that? And it takes a lot of self-assessment. And then when you bring in a practice like Pilates or yoga or meditation, you start to go inward. You start to literally bring that energy back towards you, and you
Yeah.
can start having maybe some different thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And actually, you actually have the time to assess those things and what's going on, and have some sort of enlightenment. Like we get that like runner's high, and you have all those ideas flowing. It's certainly a real phenomena, and it's something that we should be very actively attempting to do on a consistent basis.
Well, and a couple things to that. So first of all, whenever you're envious of somebody, that's because you want something about that. There's something about what they're doing that you want, and that is your body's way of saying you want it. That
Hmm.
so it can actually be a nice highlighter of what you are wanting. And a lot of times when you ask people what do they want, they're like, I don't know. Well, check and see what you were last time jealous about. You want there's something about that you want, and it's okay to want something. Right? It's not okay to be jealous all the time of them. It's okay to acknowledge like, oh, I want that. And the other thing is like we have to stop thinking that it's all or nothing. 5 minutes of movement a day is something. And it actually does compound. And it is way better than you doing only 30 minutes on one day a week. Like if you can give me 5 minutes, and if you are in some sort of relationship where there are two adults somehow taking care of a kid, then it's not, you cannot assume the other person knows what you need. There has to be a conversation of like, hey, every day it is so important that I have this. And so what do you need every day so that you can show up on this world? Okay, how do we set timers and make those things happen, even if they're in 7-minute increments, right? And then you get to every quarter, you can evaluate that. Like, okay, do we have more time? Do I have less time? Do I need this? Actually, I want to add this in. And we have to stop assuming or waiting until we have more time. There are studies that show that everyone who's waiting to have more time will never have more time. The only reason you get more time is if you actually sit down, take a look and an inventory of what's going on, and really start to like implement boundaries. And that is so hard, but it's incredibly, incredibly hard. I'm not going to say it's not, that it's easy. I don't have kids and it's not easy. I had to like, I have a light in my office that says, shh. And when it is on, you're not allowed to talk to me, right? Like I had to put those things in. And so I think, it is about that inward situation. So if you are doing Pilates, you're going to get that inward, your brain and body are going to start to talk to each other and tell you things that you needed to know about yourself. And then the next step is like, how do you include the people around you in the process? And it's not selfish when you go, this is what I need to show up and be the most best version of me. What do you need to do that? Then it's like you're on a team and now you're like working together towards a goal. And then when the kids are older, because you've been doing this your whole parenting life, this whole caring time, you already know what you want for this extra time because you've been slowly, incrementally along the way, giving yourself more and more of what you want.
Yeah, doing that transition from like having no kids to one or two or whatever, that's such a big like life change, and it's such a big adjustment for a lot of people. And um a lot of people never kind of snap out of that, and they're able to actually take those time for themselves, and they end up serving for so long. And then it's like, yeah, like what do you do when you come out of that? Or even when your kids get to like 6, 7, 8, when they're significantly more independent than they were a few years back, like what do you do with that time? Yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad that there are a lot of things out there for people to do, and I feel like as a culture we're making those things a bit more accessible. We're discussing things like mental health when it comes to like what you can do to support yourself and, anxious and depressive times. So yeah, I think we're definitely going the right direction. What have you got some examples, or how have you seen like the actual practice of Pilates support people's like mental health?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Aside from my own, like when I feel really anxious, I like literally lay on the ground and do my mat practice because I can, I can do even just a few reps of each move. And like, it really does calm the nervous system. So personally, like I really find that it's a great way, even if you only have 5 minutes to snap out of whatever you're feeling. But what I've seen in other people, um, specifically because of how I teach and how I have people in my community teach others is really focusing on what was possible. So at every move and everything, it's like, okay, like what are you able to do right now? And then because I've seen them do that, because they practice that, I have had many people that I work with quit jobs that were abusive to their time or to them as a person, like mentally abusive or and find better jobs. Like literally during the pandemic when everything was like really hard and people were even more of a strain on their mental health, like really encourage them, like, look, if you can do this exercise and you couldn't do it before, like, what does that say about you? You can do hard things. You can break things down. You can build yourself up. You can actually, you show up. You made it here today. You show up. That's data that you show up for yourself. This is like evidence that you care about you. And in doing that, I have just seen so many people be much more kind to themselves. And a lot of mental health is just the stuff we're saying in our head all day long on a nice little loop of like how the things we didn't get done that day. But when you are having this Pilates practice and you are showing up for you, it is evidence of how much you do for you. And that is going to be things that you'll have strength and energy to do for others. So it's pretty cool. I've seen people quit jobs. I've seen people leave abusive relationships. I've seen people just stand taller. Because here's the other thing that's so cool, right? We haven't even got Pilates actually does really do amazing things for your posture. I have been 5'9" since I was 12 years old. So worst posture in the world because I was like, oh my God, I'm so tall. I'm taller than all the girls, like just didn't have the strength to support that. But Pilates like literally helped with my posture, right? Here's the thing about posture. They have proven studies that if you stand in the power stance, which is like the Wonder Woman stance, if you stand in that stand for 5 minutes, you feel more confident in everything that you do. Well, if you don't have the muscular strength to stand like that for 5 minutes, which is a long time, to stand on those muscles, then you can't have that. But if you have really good posture, you literally walk around in life exuding confidence. People treat you differently because you look like you're more confident, even if you're not. And though, here's the thing, going back to like who we used to be in society, the more forward your head is getting off of your spine, the more anxious you are, the more you see life as a threat. This is like proven. Every time people's head goes more forward of their shoulders, they're actually becoming more anxious. They're going more into that lizard-like brain. The more you have your head on top of your spine, the better your posture is, the more you actually taking a look around the world from a much different place. And so even just getting the posture going, despite all the movement meditation, despite all the times that Pilates helps you like go inward on yourself, just the posture alone is going to help you see the world in a very different place. So there's that.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Uh, tell us about your podcast. It's called Be It Till You See It. Is that right?
Yeah, it's called Be It Till You See It. Thank you. I wanted a podcast that I didn't want it to only be about Pilates. I mean, I'll talk about Pilates on there, but Pilates is something you have to just like do. You can't like listen to about all the
Sure.
time. Um, uh, and so but I wanted a place where people could get inspired by other people's stories of doing things scared. Because I think a lot of us wait till we're ready. Oh, when I have this, then I will do X. And the reality is in my entire life of like trying to figure out like how do I get to the next place? How do I get to the next step? It wasn't in waiting for that step to arrive. It was the actions that I took. And then I started to like look at the actions I was taking, and the actions I took were not like guesses, or they kind of were guesses, I guess to say, but they weren't just like, I wasn't exactly like the most confident in those. I was like, I think this is the thing to do. And so I started to realize that every time I had some sort of success, anytime I felt like there was like a leap that I went from one place to another, I was acting as if I was already the person that I wanted to become. And so when I like my first Pilates class that I taught, I subbed for a friend last minute, my mentor actually, and there's 30 people. I never taught 30 people. I taught 5 people once, but I never taught 30 people. And then I was like, okay, well, if I taught 30 people, like how would I act right now? What would I do? And then I was like, okay, it's showtime. And I acted as if I was someone who taught 30 people all the time. Like, and so that's kind of what it is. So Be It Till You See It's interviewing people who are talking about how they got to where they are, the steps they took, or it's doctors and professionals that are talking about why it can be an issue for us to show up as that, whether it's a hormone imbalance or sleep deprivation or just anything like that. So I have medical doctors that come on too as well. And then because it's not about just being inspired, because that doesn't work for me. I think like I loved how I built this, but like I wanted to know, well, how did you go from crying on the floor, Miss Owner of Bumble, to actually getting investors in your business? Like what was, we're missing a step here. And I'm like, with you, I've definitely cried on the floor in my business, but no, like, I don't know how to get to the next step. So I wanted there to be action steps that people could take if they were inspired by the guest. And so every single guest interview has action steps at the end for people to take to Be It Till They See It. And it's really freaking fun. I love it. It's such a, we dropped 126 episodes to date, and like, no stopping.
That's great. Wonderful. Yeah. I mean, it's taking a podcast on and keeping the consistency up and flowing with the audience, and sticking to your kind of core values, and keeping things like relevant of what's going on. It's a difficult thing to do, but as you say, when you've got like that passion and that rapture behind it, then it just kind of feeds itself, and it is a lot of fun to do, to have conversations with people from all around the world. And we're all talking about like holistic health and functional health, but there's so many different angles to it because we're all so different and unique. We have our own stories, we have our own traumas, we have our own triumphs, and it's just a wonderful way to be able to converse these and ultimately just share stories and inspire people, because at the end of the day, sharing stories is kind of one of the most ancient forms of communication that we have, and we were able to like do that on this type of a platform. It's such a wonderful thing that we can do and share with people. So I will make sure. So yeah, how can people get connected to that podcast and to you?
Yeah. So you can listen to Be It Till You See It for free anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also watch it on YouTube. And to me, I'm on all the things. But I primarily I check all my DMs on Instagram at Lesley.Logan. But yeah, so you'll find me on Instagram and TikTok and all the places. I'm just not so good at all of things. So there's people who check my messages on those ones, and I'm on Instagram.
All right. So if we need you, Lesley, we're going to go to Instagram, right?
Yeah. You can watch all the things we have everywhere. But if you want to talk directly to me, if you want to let me know if questions about Pilates, whatever, like you can reach me there. And I hope you do. So like, please, if you, I hope you try Pilates if you haven't done it before. And if you've done it before and you don't like it, give it another try. Try a different teacher.
I'm going to do it within the next 3 weeks. I'm going to go do a Pilates class. That's my promise to you, Lesley, and I will let you know how it goes.
Oh, please do. Yes. Let me know. And if you need recommendations for teachers near you, I got a few in the BC area for sure.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, thanks for coming on the show and enlightening us all about Pilates, self-care, and all the things associated with that. I think we covered quite a lot of topics, and the whole idea of functional movement is so powerful because most people have got a body, most people use it, and most people are not using it in a very conscious, deliberate way. And what we want to do is we want to get more people moving, and we want less people to be in pain ultimately.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. I'm here for that. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, thank you very much. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. I'll make sure that you can get connected with Lesley in the show notes. You can go there. Instagram is the best place to contact her. And yeah, that is it for this episode of True Hope Cast. Thank you so much for watching. This is the official podcast of True Hope Canada. We'll see you next week.